It's funny. When you picture someone creating software, you often just imagine them like furiously typing code.
Yeah, just hammering away at the
Ex-
keyboard.
Exactly. But the reality is, even for those little side projects that seem straightforward at the start,
Hmm.
you pretty quickly find yourself juggling files and tracking changes, trying to keep everything organized. It can snowball into surprising complexity.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's really where these incredible tools called integrated development environments or, IDEs come into play.
IDEs,
Think
right?
about it like a skilled carpenter wouldn't just grab a single hammer for every single job, would they?
No, definitely not.
They have a whole workshop, filled with specialized tools. An IDE is basically that same central organized workspace, but it's for a software developer. It brings all the necessary tools together in one place.
Okay. Okay, that makes sense. So for this deep dive, we're really zeroing in on getting set up for C# development,
Yeah,
and we're going to use a really popular IDE called Visual Studio Code.
that's the one.
Now, you, our listener, you're likely thinking about jumping into the world of C# application development, right?
Hmm.
And chances are Visual Studio Code has probably popped up as a highly recommended and, well, pretty accessible place to start.
Exactly. And our goal here isn't just to list the steps. It's to really guide you through those initial, sometimes kind of daunting tasks.
Yeah, that can feel a bit intimidating.
Right, from getting it installed on your computer to actually seeing your very first C# program run.
Mm.
We want to make this feel less like some huge technical hurdle
Mm-hmm.
and more like setting up your own comfortable and efficient coding workshop.
Nice. And just so you know, we're drawing on a fantastic learning resource here, focused specifically on getting started with C# using Visual Studio Code.
It's a great guide.
So let's dive right in. What actually makes Visual Studio Code such a favorite among C# developers? Why this one?
Well, there are a few really key reasons for its widespread popularity. First off, it's remarkably quick and easy to install.
Okay, that's a big plus.
Huge win when you're eager to get started, right?
Yeah.
It's also incredibly adaptable because it supports a massive range of extensions.
Extensions, right. These are like add-ons.
Exactly, like specialized tools you can add to your workshop to make specific tasks much, much easier and faster.
Right, and let's not forget, maybe the best part, it won't cost you anything.
True.
There's a free option that's incredibly capable and, as you've likely heard, sometimes just a simple recommendation from a developer friend pointing you towards Visual Studio Code is enough to know it has those essential tools you need to just, well, get your feet wet.
Precisely. It really hits that sweet spot,
Yeah.
being approachable for newcomers while still packing a serious punch for experienced developers.
Okay, cool.
So let's get down to the practicalities then. What are the very first steps to get Visual Studio Code onto our systems?
All right, step one. The absolute first thing you'll want to do is fire up your web browser, Chrome, Firefox, Edge, whatever you prefer.
Yep.
And head over to https://code.visualstudio.com.
Okay, code.visualstudio.com. Got it.
Once you're on that page, you'll probably notice that the website is usually pretty smart at figuring out what kind of computer you're using.
Yeah, it generally detects if it's a Windows PC or a Mac or maybe a Linux machine.
That's right. And you should see a big, pretty obvious download button. For instance, if you're on a Windows computer, it'll likely say something clear like, download for Windows.
Nice and easy.
Just give that button a click, and the installer file will start downloading to your computer.
Okay, so just keep an eye on your browser's downloads then. The name of that file will depend slightly on the current version of Visual Studio Code and your operating system.
Right.
But if you're on Windows, it might look something like VS Code User Setup \64-1.81 band 0.exe or, something similar.
Gotcha. Once that download is all done, you'll need to open up your File Explorer on Windows, that's just File Explorer, and go to your Downloads folder. You should see that installer file you just grabbed sitting right there.
Okay, found it. Now what?
Now, to get the installation rolling, all you need to do is run that installer file.
Just double-click it.
On Windows, yeah, a simple double-click should do the trick.
Yeah.
You'll then be greeted by a setup window. Probably says something like, set up Microsoft Visual Studio Code.
Right.
The next step is pretty standard stuff, for installing any software. You'll need to read and accept the license agreement.
Usual terms and conditions.
Exactly. Take a moment to look through it, and if you're happy to agree, just tick the box that says, I accept the agreement, and then just keep clicking through the online instructions. Honestly, for most people just starting out, the default options are absolutely fine.
That's a good point. Yeah, stick with the defaults usually. Oh, and during the installation process, you might see a question about whether you want to install it just for your current user account or for, like, all users on the system.
Ah, okay. Which one should we pick?
For most individuals, choosing the user-specific installation just for you is usually the simpler and recommended way to go.
Less complicated. Okay, user install it is.
Yeah.
And if you ever want like more detailed instructions, maybe with screenshots and all that.
Yeah, the official Visual Studio Code documentation is fantastic for that. There's a specific page just for Windows setup at https://code.visualstudio.com/windows.
Good resource to have.
Definitely worth bookmarking in case you need it later.
Oh.
Oh, and one final little thing for this stage. After the installation is finished, Visual Studio Code might just open up automatically.
Ah,
If it does, feel free to just close it down for now. We're going to take a proper look at the interface in just a little bit.
got it.
So there you have it. Visual Studio Code is now installed on your machine.
Pretty painless, right?
Excellent. Yeah, that was easy enough. Now that it's installed, let's take a quick tour. When you open Visual Studio Code for the first time, what's the basic layout you can expect to see?
Well, at its heart, Visual Studio Code is a place for editing code, right? So its layout will feel somewhat familiar if you've used other text editors or, development tools before.
You'll typically see a sidebar docked on the left side of the window. This is your main way to navigate through the different files and folders that make up your coding project.
Right, the file list on the left.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then taking up most of the space on the right is the editor area itself. That's where you'll actually be viewing and making changes to your code.
Okay, so navigation on the left, code on the right. Pretty standard, but I get the feeling there's probably a bit more to it than just those two main areas.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the interface is actually quite well organized into 6 key areas,
Mhm.
and getting a handle on these will make it much easier to find your way around.
6 areas. Okay, let's break them down.
First, there's the activity bar. That's that narrow vertical strip right on the far left edge. Think of this as your main control panel for switching between different high-level views,
Mm-hmm.
like the Explorer for your files, the search function, or the extensions marketplace we mentioned.
Got it. The activity bar, like a quick launch for different tool sets. What's next to that?
Right next to the activity bar is the sidebar. Now, the contents of this area will change depending on what you've selected in the activity bar.
Ah, okay, so it's dynamic.
Exactly.
Okay.
So for example, if you click on that folder icon in the activity bar, that's the Explorer root, the sidebar will then show you your project files and folders. It's where a lot of the specific tools and resources related to your current task will appear.
Makes sense. Activity bar to choose the broad category, sidebar to see the details within that category. Cool. And then we have the editor, which we've already mentioned. That's where the magic of writing code happens.
Yep, the main stage.
What about that space down below the editor? I often see stuff down there in screenshots.
Right, that's the panel. This area sits at the bottom of the editor region, and it's used to display all sorts of helpful information that's kind of secondary to your main coding focus.
Like what?
You might see the output from your running program, maybe debugging information when you're trying to figure out why something isn't working.
Ah, errors and stuff.
Exactly. Any error messages or warnings that pop up, or even an integrated terminal where you can run command line tools directly. Very useful.
Okay, so the panel is like the feedback and utility area. Then there's also that bar running along the very bottom of the whole window, right?
Exactly. That's the status bar.
Yeah.
It's just a horizontal bar that stretches across the very bottom of the Visual Studio Code window. It gives you quick, at-a-glance information about the project you have open
Mm-hmm.
and the specific file you're currently working on. Things like the programming language being used, or maybe whether you have any unsaved changes. Little indicators.
Handy. And finally, just like in most desktop applications, right at the very top of the window, we have the main menu, don't we?
You got it. The main menu is your traditional menu interface, file, edit, view, etc. at the very top of the screen. Here you'll find options for all sorts of file operations.
New, open, save.
Yep, like creating new files, opening existing ones, saving your work, closing things, plus standard editing commands, options for running your code, and a whole lot more tucked away in there.
Okay, so 6 main parts. For someone who's just starting out, like, where should they really focus their attention initially? Which are the most important ones?
Yeah, good question. When you're just getting your bearings, I'd say the activity bar, the sidebar, and the editor are the 3 areas you'll be interacting with the most day to day.
Okay, those 3.
The activity bar helps you choose what you want to do. The sidebar then shows you the relevant tools and options for that activity. And the editor Well, that's where you'll spend most of your time actually writing and looking at code.
All right, let's actually open up Visual Studio Code again and take a look at this firsthand. How do we launch it after we've installed it?
The easiest way on Windows is usually just through the Start menu.
Okay.
If you open the Start menu, you should see Visual Studio Code listed as one of the recently added applications. Or you can scroll through the alphabetical list.
Or search for it, probably.
Yeah, absolutely. Another really handy trick is to just type Visual Studio Code into the search bar on the taskbar at the bottom of your screen. That usually finds it right away.
Okay, launching it now. Once it opens, the first thing you'll probably see is a welcome page, right?
That's correct. Yeah, the welcome page pops up. It's designed to be a helpful starting point for new users. It usually has links to useful resources and introductory guides, like maybe get started with VS Code.
Should we look at those?
They're worth checking out in your own time, definitely. But for now, just for this walkthrough, we can go ahead and close that welcome page.
And how do we do that? Just click that little X button next to the tab's title, isn't it? Like a browser tab?
Exactly. Just like closing any other tab in an editor or browser, you'll find that X button on the right side of the Welcome tab's title, up in the top left area of the Visual Studio Code window, just below the main menu.
Okay, got it. Click.
If you hover your mouse over it, you should see the word Close appear too.
Okay, welcome page dismissed. Now let's take a look at that sidebar. You mentioned it might be tucked away at first.
Yes, sometimes. When you first open Visual Studio Code, the sidebar might be collapsed, kind of hiding right next to the activity bar on the left. Remember, the activity bar is that vertical strip of icons on the very, very left edge of the window.
Right, the skinny bar with icons. So to see what those icons actually represent, we just hover our mouse cursor over them, like tooltips.
That's the key. Yep. If you hover your cursor over each of the icons in the activity bar, a little label will pop up telling you what each one is for.
Oh, okay.
You should see icons for things like Explore, that's the folder icon.
Yep.
Search, which looks like a magnifying glass. Source Control, often some branch icons. Run and Debug, usually a play-pause symbol. Extensions, those look like puzzle pieces.
Uh-huh.
Then Accounts and Manage, which is typically a gear icon down at the bottom.
Okay, I see them now. Hovering works. So let's say we want to actually see our project files and folders. Which of these icons should we click on?
For that, you want to click on the Explorer icon in the activity bar. It looks like a little file folder, usually the top one.
Okay, clicking the folder.
Once you click it, the sidebar should slide open, and you'll see it's now labeled as Explorer. This is where you'll navigate and access your project folders and the code files inside them.
Right.
Since this is likely your first time opening Visual Studio Code properly, you probably won't have any projects folder open just yet. It'll be empty.
Got it. Okay, makes sense. And what if we want to take a look at those add-ons we talked about earlier, the extensions that, enhance VS Code? Which icon do we click then?
For extensions, you'll want to click on the Extensions icon in the activity bar. It's usually represented by a few puzzle pieces linked together, maybe 4 squares.
Ah, the puzzle pieces. Okay, clicked.
When you click that, the sidebar will change its display again, this time showing extensions. This is your gateway to searching for, installing, and managing extensions that add support for various programming languages, debuggers, themes, all sorts of really useful features.
Cool. We'll definitely be coming back to those extensions later, I imagine. For now, how do we close the extensions sidebar and go back to having it hidden? Just click the icon again.
The simplest way is just to click the extensions icon in the activity bar again. It acts like a toggle switch.
Click on, click off?
Exactly. Click it once to open the sidebar view, and click it again to close it.
Makes sense. Now let's quickly peek at that main menu at the very top of the screen again. File, edit, etc. What kind of things can we typically find in there?
Yeah, the main menu houses a lot of the fundamental operations you'll perform.
Yeah.
If you click on File, you'll see options like creating a new file, opening existing files or folders, saving your work, closing files, the usual stuff.
Standard file operations. What about edit?
If you explore the Edit menu, you'll find standard editing commands like Find, Replace, and also some handy options for like commenting out lines of code easily,
Oh, nice.
as well as the familiar Cut, Copy, Paste, Undo, and Redo.
Okay. Standard stuff you'd expect in most applications. Anything in those menus that's particularly relevant for like writing code specifically?
Yes, absolutely. Some of the menus definitely offer options specifically for interacting with your code. For example, under the Selection menu, you'll find various ways to select and manipulate blocks of code more efficiently than just dragging the mouse.
Okay.
And the Run menu is really important. That's where you'll find the options for actually running and debugging your application once you have some code written.
Run and debug. Got it. Interesting. Now, you also mentioned something about having a terminal available right inside Visual Studio Code, like a command prompt.
Exactly, yeah, an integrated terminal.
How do we get to that?
You can open it by clicking on the Terminal menu in the main menu at the top, and then selecting New Terminal.
Okay, terminal, new terminal, click.
There it is.
This will bring up the panel area at the bottom of the screen, and you'll see a command line prompt appear down there.
What's the advantage of having a terminal right there within the code editor? Why not just use a separate window? Oh, it's incredibly convenient for developers. Having the terminal right there means you can run command line interface, or CLI, commands directly from within Visual Studio Code without having to constantly switch back and forth to a separate terminal application.
Ah, saves context switching.
Precisely. And as we'll see a bit later, we'll be using .NET CLI commands right in here to create and run our C# applications. Keeps everything together.
Cool.
For now, just take a look at the terminal panel, notice the prompt, and then you can close it again by clicking the little X button in the top right corner of the panel itself.
Okay, terminal closed. You also mentioned something called the command palette earlier. What's that all about? Sounds fancy.
Yeah, it sounds fancier than it is, maybe. But the command palette is a really powerful and time-saving feature in Visual Studio Code.
How do we open it?
You can access it by going to the View menu in the main menu and selecting Command Palette. Alternatively, there are also keyboard shortcuts to open it quickly, which you'll probably learn later, but using the menu is a good way to find it the first time.
View. Command palette. Okay, got it. Looks like a search bar popped up at the top.
Exactly. The Command Palette is essentially a text input field where you can type in keywords to find and execute all sorts of commands that Visual Studio Code offers. It's a fantastic way to quickly access features without needing to remember exactly where they were buried in the menus.
So it's like a search bar for actions within the IDE. Let's try it out. You mentioned we could type in extensions.
Exactly. Go ahead and open the Command Palette if it's not still open, View Command Palette, and then just type extensions into that input field.
Okay, typing EXT.
You'll notice that as you type, the list of available commands below will automatically filter to show you only those that are related to managing extensions.
Yep, I see a whole list of extension-related commands now. Pretty slick. What if we change our search? Erase that and type help.
Go ahead and type help in
Right.
there. You'll see the list of commands updates again, now showing you commands that are related to getting help and information within Visual Studio Code.
Okay, that's pretty neat. It seems like a really quick way to find things you need without hunting through menus.
It really is. Saves a ton of time once you get used to it.
There was one specific command you mentioned in the context of the command palette. Something about an interactive editor playground.
Right, yeah. In that list of command options that appears when you type help, look for and select the one that says help, Interactive Editor Playground.
Okay, found it. Help! Interactive editor playground. Clicking it. Ah, it opened a new document.
Yep, it opens a new document right in the editor area. This document contains a list of interactive activities that you can explore to learn more about different features of Visual Studio Code in a hands-on way. It's kind of a built-in tutorial.
Okay, I see the list of activities. Editing, IntelliSense, formatting. You mentioned something about formatting our code earlier.
Yes, in that list of interactive activities, find and choose the one labeled Formatting.
Okay, formatting.
Take a quick minute just to skim through the information it provides about the different code formatting options available in Visual Studio Code.
Yeah.
We'll actually be using code formatting commands later on when we start writing actual C# code.
Oh.
So it's good to just be aware of where these features are located.
All right, quick skim. Right.
In case you have a quick look, you can go ahead and close that Editor Playground document, just like you closed the welcome page earlier,
Yeah.
using the little X on the tab.
Done. Okay, introduction to the user interface complete. That feels less intimidating now.
Good.
Now let's talk about making Visual Studio Code actually useful for C# development specifically. That's where these extensions come back into play, right?
Precisely. Extensions are really what make Visual Studio Code so incredibly powerful and adaptable. They're like those specialized add-ons we talked about.
Uh-huh.
They provide extra features and functionality to the editor. You can get extensions that add robust support for specific programming languages, like C# in our case, provide helpful design tools, or even introduce entirely new features to the IDE.
And for C#, what do we need?
For C# development in Visual Studio Code, we heavily rely on dedicated C# language extensions and something called the .NET Software Development Kit, or SDK.
Okay, .NET SDK and C# extensions. Before we jump into installing those, can you give us a quick overview? What are the .NET SDK and the .NET Runtime, actually? They sound pretty fundamental.
Absolutely, yeah, they are fundamental. So .NET itself is a versatile open source developer platform from Microsoft. It's used for building a really wide variety of applications, websites, mobile apps, desktop software, cloud services, you name it.
Okay.
It includes the programming languages themselves, primarily C#, but also others like F# and Visual Basic, as well as a vast collection of pre-built code libraries that developers can readily use. Saves a lot of work.
Right, reusable code blocks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's really great is that you can use .NET to develop and run these applications on Windows, Mac OS, and Linux. It's cross-platform.
Nice. Now, within that .NET ecosystem, you mentioned the runtime and the SDK. What's the difference?
Okay, so there's the .NET Runtime, sometimes called the Common Language Runtime, or CLR. Think of the runtime as the essential engine
Uh-huh.
that your compiled C# applications need in order to actually run on a computer. It executes the code.
Okay, so the runtime is just for running the finished apps.
Right.
Got it. What about
Yeah.
the SDK then?
The .NET SDK, or Software Development Kit, is a much more comprehensive set of tools. You need it not only to run C# applications, but also to actually write, build, test, and debug them.
Ah, so the SDK is for the developer.
Exactly. Visual Studio Code, with the help of those C# extensions we're about to install, leverages the .NET SDK to provide the complete C# development environment. It includes crucial things like the compilers that translate your human-readable C# code into a format that the computer can actually execute.
Okay.
Think of the SDK as your full developer toolkit, while the runtime is just the necessary engine to run the final product that you build with the SDK.
Got it. That clarifies things. So we need the extensions in Visual Studio Code to understand and work with C# code. And we need the .NET SDK to actually build and run those applications. Let's start by getting those C# extensions installed in Visual Studio Code. What's the very first step?
Okay, first, make absolutely sure that you have Visual Studio Code open and running.
Check.
Then, on that activity bar on the far left, go ahead and click on the extensions icon. Remember, it looks like those connected puzzle pieces.
Puzzle pieces clicked.
This will open up the extensions view right there in the sidebar again.
Okay, I'm in the extensions view now. Looks like a marketplace. What do we do next?
In the search bar at the very top of the extensions view, which probably says something like Search Extensions in Marketplace, simply type in C#.
C#. Okay.
As you begin typing, you'll see the list of extensions below, automatically filtered to show you those that are related to C# programming.
All right, yeah, a whole bunch of C# related extensions have appeared. Which specific one are we looking for? There seem to be a few.
Good point. You'll want to find and select the extension called C# Dev Kit, official C# extension from Microsoft. It's really crucial to make sure it's the one published directly by Microsoft.
Okay, C# Dev Kit by Microsoft.
Right.
Found it.
You'll see some information about it, highlighting that it provides features for developing, editing, and debugging C# code within Visual Studio Code. Once you've located it in the list, click the blue Install button that's right next to it.
Okay, I see the install button for the C# Dev Kit. I've clicked it. Now it says installing with a little spinning icon.
Exactly. This particular extension is pretty comprehensive, so it might take around, say, 30 to 40 seconds to fully install. Give it a moment.
Okay, waiting.
Once it's complete, that install button will change to say installed and maybe turn gray or green.
Ah, okay, it just finished. It says installed.
Perfect. Now, you might also see some notifications pop up in the bottom right corner of Visual Studio Code during or after the installation.
Yeah, I think one just flashed up.
Okay. You can generally dismiss any notification asking you to sign in for now. And you can also close any message that mentions that the .NET Core SDK cannot be found.
Wow.
Don't worry about that message, because we're going to be installing the full .NET SDK in our very next step anyway.
Good to know. I'll ignore those or close them if they pop up. What should I do immediately after the C# Dev Kit shows as installed?
Go ahead and close any Get Started with C# Dev Kit page that might have automatically opened in your main editor area. Just X out of that tab.
Okay, closed.
Then in the Extensions View sidebar, clear the C# text that you typed into the search bar. Just backspace it out.
All right, search bar cleared.
This will refresh the view, and you should now see your newly installed extensions right at the very top of the list, likely in a section labeled Installed.
Yep, I see those three. .NET Install Tool, C# and C# Dev Kit all listed there under Installed.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned another C# related extension earlier called IntelliCode. Does that come with the dev kit, or do we need that separately?
Good question. It's recommended to install it separately, although it works closely with the dev kit.
Yeah.
It adds some AI-powered smarts.
Ah, the AI helper. Okay, let's get that too.
Yep. So in the extensions search bar, type C# again.
Okay, C# typed again.
This time, look for an extension called IntelliCode for C# DevKit AI-assisted development for C# DevKit. Again, make sure it's the one published by Microsoft.
IntelliCode for C# DevKit by Microsoft.
Got it. Once you find it in the search results, go ahead and click the Install button for this one too.
Clicking Install. This one seems much quicker.
Yeah, IntelliCode usually installs very fast.
Okay, done. Installed.
Excellent. You can now close any IntelliCode C# DevKit welcome pages that might have appeared in the editor.
Closed it.
And to keep things tidy, you can also close the entire extensions view by clicking the extensions icon, the puzzle pieces, in the activity bar one more time.
Clicking the puzzle pieces. Sidebar is hidden again. Perfect.
So now you have the essential C# extensions all set up and ready to go in VS Code. What's the next big piece we need?
You guessed it, the .NET SDK itself. We've got the extensions in Visual Studio Code that know how to work with C#.
Right.
And now we need the actual tools that will allow us to build and run those C# applications.
The engine and the toolkit we talked about?
Exactly. And the C# DevKit extension we just installed actually helps streamline this process for us. But the very first thing we should probably do is quickly check if you might already have the .NET SDK installed on your system, maybe from a previous project or something.
Oh, okay. How do we go about doing that check?
The easiest way is to open a brand new terminal right within Visual Studio Code again.
Okay, menu bar, terminal, new terminal.
Yep. A terminal window should then appear in the panel down at the bottom.
Okay, I've got a terminal window open. What command do I need to type in to check?
At the terminal prompt, carefully type in the following command exactly as it is. .NET version, that's .NET space -- version, and then press the Enter key.
.NET version, okay, hitting Enter.
Now, what output do you see? This command is essentially asking the .NET command line interface, the CLI, to tell us which version of .NET, if any, is currently installed and recognized by your system.
Okay, it says, .NET is not recognized as an internal or external command, operable program, or batch file.
Ah, okay. That error message clearly indicates that the .NET SDK is not currently installed, or at least not properly configured in your system's path yet.
So definitely need to install it then.
Yep, but not a problem at all. Visual Studio Code, especially with the C# DevKit we just installed, makes it quite straightforward to get the .NET SDK installed.
Good. Which version should we install?
We highly recommend installing the latest officially supported version, which, as of this recording, is typically .NET 8. That's also the version used in many current learning resources, including the excellent Microsoft Learn C# training series.
Okay, .NET 8 it is. How do we kick off the installation from VS Code?
To initiate the installation, we'll use the command palette again. Remember how to open that.
Yeah. View command palette, right?
Perfect. Go ahead and open the command palette.
Okay, the command palette is now open. What should I type in this time?
In the command palette's input field, start typing .NET install. You should see some options appear related to .NET installation.
Okay, .NET install. I see one. Install new .NET SDK. Is that the one?
That's the one. Select .NET, install new .NET SDK.
All right, I've selected that option. What happens next? It looks like it's showing a list of versions.
Exactly. You should now see a list of the available .NET SDK versions. Under the latest section, make absolutely sure that .NET 8 is selected or highlighted.
Yep, .NET 8 is right there under latest.
Great. Now simply click the install button that's located right next to it.
Okay, I've clicked install for .NET 8. It looks like it's now downloading something in the background. Progress bar and beginning the installation process.
That's right. The download and installation might take a few minutes, maybe longer, depending on the speed of your internet connection and your computer. Just let it run its course.
Okay, watching the progress. It seems to be installing now. Okay, it looks like it finished. A notification popped up saying .NET SDK installation successful.
Excellent. Now here's an important little step. Once it's completely finished, it's a good practice to actually close Visual Studio Code entirely.
Close it down completely. Why is that?
Yes, just shut it down. It helps ensure that all the necessary environment variables and system paths get correctly updated system-wide to recognize the newly installed .NET SDK. Sometimes things don't register properly until you restart the application.
Ah, okay. Makes sense. So once the .NET 8 SDK installation is done, I'll go ahead and close out of Visual Studio Code. File exit.
Perfect. Then after a brief moment, maybe count to 5, go ahead and open Visual Studio Code up again.
Okay, I've closed it and then reopened it. Now, how do we double check that the .NET SDK is really properly installed this time around?
Just like before. We need to open a new terminal within Visual Studio Code.
Right, new terminal. Okay, terminal, new terminal.
Then at the terminal prompt, type that same command again, .NET version, and press the Enter key. Remember, it's crucial to open a new terminal window after installing the SDK because existing terminal sessions might not have picked up the path changes yet.
Okay, makes sense. Running .NET version again in the new terminal.
Yeah.
Moment of truth, yes, it worked.
Awesome. What does it say?
It says 8.0.3010.
Perfect. That's exactly what we wanted to see. That number confirms you've successfully installed a version of the .NET 8 SDK. It might be 8.0.30 or a slightly newer version like 8.0.301 or something. But as long as the number begins with an 8, you're golden.
Fantastic.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
You're now one massive step closer to being able to build and run actual C# applications. You can go ahead and close the terminal panel once again if you like.
Will do. Phew. Okay, that feels like real progress. We've got Visual Studio Code installed, we've taken a tour of the interface, we've configured those essential C# extensions, and now we've got the .NET SDK all set and ready to go.
Yep, the workshop is fully equipped now.
So what's the grand finale? Actually creating and running our very first C# application, right? Seeing something happen.
Absolutely. This is the payoff.
Mhm.
The .NET SDK comes bundled with that powerful command line interface, the CLI, which we can conveniently access right here within Visual Studio Code's integrated terminal.
Right, the .NET command we just used.
Exactly. We'll be using specific .NET CLI commands now to perform tasks like creating a new console application from a template, compiling our C# code, and finally executing those applications to see them in action.
Okay. You mentioned an example of a CLI command in the learning material earlier. It looks something like .NET New Console Aussie Sharp Projects Test Project. Can you break down what each part of that command actually does again?
Certainly. Yeah, the basic structure of a typical .NET CLI command usually follows the pattern .NET command arguments.
Okay.
In that particular .NET is the main driver. It's the core command line tool for interacting with the .NET platform.
Right.
Then new console is the specific command we're instructing it to execute. New means create something new, and console specifies the type of project template to use, in this case, a basic console application that runs in the terminal.
Makes sense. Create a new console app. What about the last part, Dado C# Projects Test Project?
Right. That last part, Dado C# Projects Test Project, is an optional argument. The OC flag stands for output, and what immediately follows it, C# Projects Test Project, is a specific path to the folder where we want the new project files to be created. The OThe means starting from the current directory.
Ah, so O specifies the output location. What happens if you leave that off, if you just type .NET New Console?
Good question. If you were to omit that O argument and simply run .NET New Console, the new application files would be created directly within whatever folder your terminal is currently pointing to at that moment. Using OO gives you more control over where the project goes and what its main folder is called.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. -O for output directory. So let's actually try our hand at creating our first C# console application. What's the very first step we need to take before running that command?
First, ensure that Visual Studio Code is open. Then we need to tell VS Code which main folder we want to work within. Go to File in the main menu and select Open Folder.
Okay, File, Open Folder, brings up the File Explorer dialog.
Yep. This will bring up a familiar dialog box where you can choose a specific location on your computer for your new project files. For this exercise, let's navigate to your desktop folder.
Okay, desktop.
Or, if you have a preferred folder where you like to keep your programming projects organized, like a projects or code folder, you can certainly use that instead. The key is to choose a location that's easy for you to find and remember.
I'll stick with desktop for now.
Okay? Once you're in the desktop folder or your chosen location, go ahead and click the Select Folder button.
Selecting desktop. Ah, okay. VS Code's title bar now shows desktop, and it might ask about trusting the authors.
Yes, you might encounter a security dialog asking if you trust the authors of the files within this folder since you just opened it. It's generally safe for folders you create yourself, so go ahead and select, yes, I trust the authors.
Okay, trusted. All right, I've opened my desktop folder in VS Code. What do we do next?
Now, open a new terminal within Visual Studio Code. Once again, New terminal.
New terminal.
You should see that the prompt in the terminal panel now shows the specific path to the folder you just opened. Since you opened the desktop, it should probably look something like C username desktop.
Yep, the terminal is open, and it's currently pointing to my desktop. What command do I enter now to actually create our project?
Okay, ready? At the terminal prompt, carefully type this command exactly as shown. .NET New Console -C# Projects Test Project.
.NET New Console -E Sharp Projects Test Project. Got it. Pressing Enter.
Okay, let it run. This command will use that pre-built .NET program template to generate the basic files and folder structure for a new C# console application project right there inside your desktop folder within the path we specified.
It says the template console app was created successfully.
Perfect. It actually created 2 new folders for you. First, a folder named C# Projects right on your desktop, and then inside that, another folder named Test Project. It also uses Test Project as the default name for your main project file, which will have a .cs pro extension.
It's project blueprint file.
Exactly. Think of this .cs pro file as the blueprint for your project, outlining all its dependencies and build configurations.
Okay, I've run that command. Now, if I look in the Explorer panel on the left side of VS Code, yes, I can indeed see a new folder called C# Projects.
Great.
If I click the little arrow to expand that, there's the test project folder inside, and within the test project folder, there are 2 files, program.cs and testproject.csproj, just like you said.
Perfect. You've successfully created the project structure. Now, the program.cs file is where the actual C# code for your application will reside. Go ahead and click on program.cs in the Explorer panel to open it up in the main editor area.
Clicking program.cs. Okay, the code popped up in the editor.
And you should see some pre-generated default code for a basic Hello World console application already in there, right?
Yep, I see it. There's a comment at the very top like see https.aka.mc new console-template. And then the main line of code is console.writeline hello world.
That's the standard starter code. It just displays the text Hello World in the
Right.
console window when you run it.
Okay, now let's make a small change to this default code, right? Make it our own.
Exactly. First, let's make sure our terminal is operating inside the project folder, not just the desktop. In the Explorer view on the left, find that test project folder again. Right-click on it,
Right-clicking test project.
and from the context menu that appears, select Open in Integrated Terminal.
Open an integrated terminal. Okay, click that. The terminal path changed.
Good. This just ensures that our terminal is now specifically focused on our project's folder. Double-check that the terminal prompt now correctly shows the path ending in your project folder. For example, it should now be something like C, user's name, desktop, C# projects, test project.
Yep, it ends in test project. Perfect. What's our next step to customize the code?
Okay, now go back to the editor window showing the program.cs code. Let's modify that console, right line. Change it from the default console, right line, hello world, to, let's say, console, right line, hello C#. Just change the text inside the quotes.
Okay, changing world to C# inside the quotes. Console right line. Hello C#. Got it. Oh, VS Code just popped up a little message at the bottom. Required assets to build and debug are missing from test project. Add them. Should I click yes?
Yes, that often happens the first time you edit a C# file in a new project. Go ahead and confidently select yes on that notification to just add some necessary configuration files for debugging later.
Okay, clicked yes. Change the text to hello C#. What do I do next to see this new message in action?
Crucial step. Make sure you save the file. Go to File in the main menu and click on Save, or use the keyboard shortcut, usually Ctrl+S on Windows.
Right, saving is important. Okay, file save. Done. Saved.
It's really important to save your changes, otherwise when you run the code, the computer will just run the old unchanged version. Common mistake.
Got it. Saved. Now, how do we actually compile and make this code run?
Okay, 2 steps. First, we need to build the application. Go back to the terminal window, which should still be in the test project directory. Type the command .NET build, and then press the Enter key.
.NET build. Enter. Okay, it's doing something. Lots of text scrolling. Build succeeded.
Excellent. That .NET build command takes your C# code in program.cs and any necessary dependencies, compiles them into that intermediate language format we talked about, and creates the actual executable files.
Okay, so it's built. Now, to actually run the application and see our personalized hello C# message, what's the magic command for that?
In the very same terminal window, simply type .NET run and then press the Enter key.
.NET run. Enter.
The .NET run command conveniently takes your source code, builds it if necessary, though we just did that, and then executes it without requiring separate explicit compile or launch commands.
Yeah.
It's a nice shortcut for development.
There it is. Awesome. In the terminal panel, right below where I typed .NET run, I can clearly see the output. Hello, C#, printed out. It worked.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You have just successfully created, modified, built, and run your very first C# console application using Visual Studio Code and the .NET SDK. That's a huge milestone.
It really feels like it.
And just as a quick note, if you had still seen the original Hello World message appear instead,
Uh-huh.
the very first thing you'd want to do is double check that you definitely saved the changes you made to the program.cs file before running .NET Build or .NET Run. It's almost always the culprit.
Good tip. Save early, save often. Well, that was quite a journey, wasn't it?
It really was.
We started with just the initial thought that software development is more than just typing code. And then we dove deep into setting up our C# development environment, specifically with Visual Studio Code. We downloaded and installed it, explored all the different nooks and crannies of the user interface,
Got familiar with the layout.
configured those essential C# extensions, installed the crucial .NET SDK,
Yep. Got the toolkit ready.
and finally, we proudly created and ran our very first Hello C# application.
Absolutely. And what you've really accomplished here is setting up a coding environment that's actively used by professional developers all over the world every single day.
Wow, okay.
You now have a really solid foundation to start exploring the vast and honestly exciting possibilities that the world of C# programming has to offer.
It definitely feels like just the very beginning, though. Visual Studio Code seems like an incredibly powerful tool, and we've really only just scratched the surface of how it can help us be more productive as we, delve deeper into learning C#.
Exactly right. And this setup, you now have Visual Studio Code working smoothly in tandem with the .NET SDK. It truly opens up a whole universe of potential application development, from simple tools to complex systems. Yeah, the possibilities seem huge. So here's something to think about. Now that you have this fundamental setup in place, this working C# workshop,
Yeah.
what kind of applications could you maybe envision yourself building someday? What interesting problems out there could you potentially solve, or what useful tools could you create now that you have this starting point?
That's a great question to ponder.
Definitely something to keep in mind and maybe explore as you continue your C# adventure. The journey's just beginning.